The alien ships hung in Earth's sky like dark metal clouds. For 15 long years, the Zephyrian fleet had blocked out the sun with their massive warships. Down below, in the ruins of what used to be Washington, D.C., President Jake Morrison sat at a broken desk in an underground bunker. The air was thick and stale. Emergency lights flickered on concrete walls covered with cracks. Morrison looked older than his 60 years. His hair was completely gray now and deep lines marked his tired face. Across from him sat General Lisa Kane, the last military leader of Earth's resistance forces. "Read it again," Morrison said quietly. Kane picked up the alien message pad. The words glowed with cold blue light. "The Zephyrian Collective demands final surrender. All human populations will submit to neural conditioning within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in complete planetary sterilization." Morrison closed his eyes. Neural conditioning meant the aliens would change human brains with chemicals and machines. Humans would become like robots, following alien orders without question. It was worse than death, but the other choice was no choice at all. High above them, past layers of rock and steel, Admiral Vexus Thorax stood on the bridge of his command ship. The Zephyrian looked like a giant lizard walking on two legs. His scales were dark green, and his yellow eyes never showed mercy. For 15 years he had waited for this moment. "Status report." Vexithorak hissed to his second-in-command. "All human resistance bases have been located and destroyed," the junior officer replied. "Their orbital platforms are gone. Food supplies in the underground cities are nearly finished. They have no choice but to surrender." Vex Thorak's mouth curved into something like a smile. His sharp teeth gleamed in the bridge lights. The humans had fought longer than most species, but every race eventually broke. Soon, Earth would join the dozens of other worlds under Zephyrian control. Back in the bunker, Morrison walked to a small window that looked out into the underground city. Thousands of people moved through narrow tunnels and chambers carved from rock. Children played in the dim light, but their laughter sounded hollow. Adults worked at machines that barely functioned, growing food in hydroponic gardens that produced less each month. "How many people are left?" Morrison asked. "About 2 billion worldwide," Kane answered. "Most are in underground cities like this. 1. The surface is too dangerous with their patrol ships." Morrison remembered when Earth had 8 billion people, cities full of life and light, green parks and blue oceans. Now the Zephyrians had poisoned much of the surface. Their factories pumped out gray smoke that blocked the real sun. Earth looked like a dying world. "What about the other resistance cells?" Morrison asked. Kane shook her head. "The last one in the Pacific went silent 3 weeks ago. We're alone, sir." Morrison sat back down and stared at the surrender document. The alien writing looked like sharp claws scratching across the page. If he signed it, humanity would survive in a way. People would live, work, and have families, but they would not be human anymore. They would be slaves who thought they were. "Happy, sir?" A young communications officer ran into the room. His name was Peter Walsh, and he had been monitoring radio signals for years. "I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors." Kane looked up. "What kind of strange?" "It's coming from beyond the outer planets. The signal is weak, but it's using old Earth military codes from before the invasion." Morrison and Kane looked at each other. Before the invasion, Earth had sent out colony ships to distant stars. Everyone assumed those ships had been destroyed or lost in space years ago. "Put it on speaker," Morrison ordered. Static filled the room for a moment. Then a voice came through, clear and strong despite traveling across billions of miles. "Earth Control, this is Admiral Susan Clark aboard the UES Defiance. The Silent Fleet has returned. We have been waiting for this moment. Prepare for liberation." The room went completely quiet. Morrison felt his heart beat faster. Admiral Susan Clark had commanded the Exodus Fleet, the last ships to leave Earth before the Zephyrians arrived. That was 25 years ago. "This is impossible," Kane whispered. "The Exodus Fleet left with colony ships, not warships. Even if they survived, they couldn't have the strength to fight the Zephyrians." The radio crackled again. This time the voice was different, speaking in an accent Morrison did not recognize. "People of Earth, this is Commander Zentar of the Voidran Remnant Fleet. Your species showed us that survival is possible. We have learned much in the darkness between stars. The Zephyrian Collective's crimes will be answered." More voices followed. Different languages, different species, all broadcasting the same message. They were coming to Earth. They were coming to fight. Up in orbit, Admiral Vexathorak received the transmissions at the same time. His bridge crew looked nervous as their sensors began detecting ships appearing at the edge of the solar system. First dozens, then hundreds of contacts showed on their screens. "Impossible," Vexathorak snarled. "We destroyed all the resistance fleets years ago. What are these ships?" His science officer studied the readings with growing fear. "Admiral, these energy signatures don't match anything in our database. Some of these ships are using technology we've never seen before." Vexathorak felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. For 1,000 years, the Zephyrian Collective had conquered world after world. They were the strongest military force in the galaxy. Nothing could challenge them. But now, ships were appearing throughout the solar system. Ships that should not exist, carrying weapons that should not be possible. Down in the bunker, Morrison stood up and walked to Kane. The surrender document lay on the table between them, waiting for his signature. "General," Morrison said, "I think we should wait before making any final decisions." Kane nodded, a small smile appearing on her face for the first time in months. "Yes, sir. I think that would be wise." Outside, people in the underground city had heard the transmissions too. Word spread quickly through the tunnels and chambers. Children stopped playing to listen. Workers put down their tools. For the first time in 15 years, people began to hope. The Zephyrians had demanded Earth's surrender. They had given humanity 24 hours to give up everything that made them human. Instead, the silent fleet was coming home, and everything was about to change. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had not seen real sunlight in 8 years. She lived in Luna Base, a hidden research station on the dark side of Earth's moon. The base was supposed to be abandoned, but Elena and 12 other scientists had stayed behind when the Zephyrians invaded. They kept working in secret, using broken equipment and spare parts to watch the stars. Elena's job was to listen for signals from deep space. Most days she heard nothing but empty static. The universe seemed dead and cold. But 3 days ago, something impossible had happened. Her old radio equipment picked up a transmission from beyond Pluto. The message used Earth military codes that were older than the invasion. Only Earth ships should have those codes, but all Earth ships were supposed to be destroyed or captured. "Commander Hayes," Elena called softly into her communication device. "You need to come here right now." Commander Alex Hayes walked slowly across the metal floor of the base. He had lost his left arm fighting Zephyrian soldiers on Mars 8 years ago. The doctors had given him a mechanical replacement, but it never worked quite right. Hayes commanded the small group of people still living on Luna Base. "What is it, Elena?" Hayes asked. He looked tired. Everyone looked tired these days. Elena pointed at her computer screen. Numbers and symbols scrolled across the display faster than Hayes could read them. "These are identification signals from the Exodus fleet, the ships that left Earth 25 years ago." Hayes stared at the screen. The Exodus fleet was a legend now. When Earth's governments first detected the approaching Zephyrian armada, they had made a desperate plan. 100 ships carrying Earth's smartest people, best technology, and samples from every living thing on the planet were secretly launched toward distant star systems. Most people thought those ships had been lost in space years ago. Travel between stars took decades, and the colony ships were not built for war. "This can't be real," Hayes said. "Even if some of those ships survived, they would be too far away to help us now." Elena's equipment suddenly came alive with activity. Lights flashed and alarms beeped as new signals appeared on her screens. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds of contacts throughout the outer solar system. "Commander," Elena whispered, "I think you should sit down." The main communication speaker crackled with static. Then a voice came through speaking clear English with an accent Hayes remembered from his military training. Earth Control, this is Admiral Susan Clark aboard the UES Defiance. The silent fleet has returned. We have been waiting for this moment. Prepare for liberation. Hayes felt his knees go weak. Admiral Susan Clark had been one of Earth's greatest military leaders. She had commanded the defense of the Jupiter colonies before taking charge of the Exodus fleet. Hayes had served under her command as a young officer before the Zephyrians came. Admiral Clark, Hayes spoke into his communicator. This is Commander. Hayes at Luna Base, we thought you were all dead. Not dead, Commander, Clark's voice replied. We've been very busy. How is the situation on Earth? Hayes looked at Elena, then back at the speaker. Bad, Admiral. Very bad. The Zephyrians control everything. They're demanding final surrender within hours. Most of our people are trapped in underground cities. I see, Clark said. Well, Commander, I think it's time we reminded the Zephyrians why they should have left humanity alone. More voices began broadcasting on different frequencies. But these were not human voices. They spoke in languages Hayes had never heard, with accents that sounded like wind through metal or water flowing over stones. People of Earth, said a voice like singing crystal. This is ship singer Valana of the Voidren Remnant. Your people found us when we had lost hope. We have not forgotten. Another voice followed, deep and rumbling like distant thunder. Greetings, Earthkin. I am War Chief Korg of the Ember Collective. The Zephyrians burned our worlds. Today they will pay. Elena stared at her screens in amazement. Commander, I'm detecting over 800 ships. They're spread throughout the solar system. Some are hiding behind gas giant moons, others just appeared from nowhere. Hayes grabbed his communication device. Admiral Clark, what exactly did you find out there? Clark's voice came back with a sound that might have been laughter. We found friends, Commander. Lots of friends. It turns out the Zephyrians have been making enemies for a very long time. They just never expected those enemies to work together. On the main display screen, Elena pulled up a tactical map of the solar system. Red dots showed the positions of Zephyrian ships in orbit around Earth. Blue dots marked the locations of the mysterious new fleet. There were far more blue dots than red ones. Admiral, Hayes said, the Zephyrians have been occupying Earth for 15 years. Their technology is advanced. Their ships are powerful. How do you plan to fight them? Commander, Clark replied, we've had 25 years to prepare for this day. We've learned things the Zephyrians never imagined possible. They think they destroyed all the species they conquered. They were wrong. Hayes walked to the observation window that looked out toward Earth. The planet looked sick from space. Gray clouds covered most of the surface where Zephyrian factories pumped out pollution. The blue oceans had turned dark green. City lights that once sparkled like jewels were now dim and scattered. What are your orders, Admiral? Hayes asked. Monitor all communications between Zephyrian ships. Record everything they say and do. We need to know their defensive positions before we begin. Elena looked up from her equipment. Admiral, I'm detecting massive power buildups throughout your fleet. What kind of weapons are you carrying? There was a long pause before Clark answered. The kind that should have been used on the Zephyrians a long time ago, Doctor. The kind that will make sure they never hurt anyone again. Suddenly, all of Elena's equipment screamed with alarm signals. Energy readings spiked beyond anything she had ever seen. In space around them, stars seemed to flicker and dim as enormous ships uncloaked themselves. My God, Hayes breathed, staring out the window. A ship longer than Luna Base itself hung in space nearby. Its hull was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Strange symbols glowed along its sides in colors that hurt to look at directly. That's not human technology, Elena said. No, Clark's voice confirmed. It's better than human technology. It's human technology improved by 6 different species who all have very good reasons to hate the Zephyrians. Hayes activated the base's emergency communication system. Every human settlement, every underground city, every hidden resistance cell would hear this message. Attention all Earth forces, Hayes broadcast. This is Luna Base. The Exodus fleet has returned. They are not alone. Prepare for liberation. Throughout the solar system, Zephyrian commanders stared at their sensor displays in growing fear. Ships appeared where no ships should be. Energy readings showed weapons that exceeded anything in their experience. Admiral Vex Thorak received the reports from his bridge officers with increasing anger and confusion. For 1,000 years, the Zephyrian Collective had been the strongest force in the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and destroyed dozens of species. Now somehow those destroyed species were back, and they had brought humanity with them. The Silent Fleet had indeed returned, but they had not returned alone. War was coming to Earth's skies. Admiral Susan Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the tactical display with calm eyes. She had aged only 7 years since leaving Earth 25 years ago, thanks to traveling at nearly the speed of light. But those 7 years had changed everything. The Exodus fleet was no longer the desperate collection of colony ships that had fled Earth in the dark of night. Clark looked around her bridge at crew members from 6 different species, all working together with smooth efficiency. The Defiance itself was no longer recognizable as the cargo hauler it had once been. "Admiral," said Captain Danny Wright, her second in command, "the Zephyrians are demanding an explanation for our presence. They want us to leave the solar system immediately." Clark's weathered face showed no emotion. She had seen what the Zephyrians did to conquered worlds. She had walked through the ruins of the Voidran homeworld. She had held the last surviving child of the Ember Collective as he died from Zephyrian poison gas. "Signal the fleet, Captain. Operation Homecoming begins now." Throughout the solar system, the Silent Fleet began to move. Ships that had been hiding in the shadow of Jupiter's moons emerged into open space. Others became visible as their advanced stealth systems shut down, revealing the true size of the returning armada. 800 ships moved toward Earth with deadly purpose. But these were not the simple colony vessels that had left decades ago. Each ship now incorporated technology from multiple species, powered by weapons the Zephyrians had never encountered. On the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Vex Thorak felt his blood turn cold. His sensor officer reported power readings that made no sense, energy signatures that exceeded his own dreadnoughts by factors of 10 or more. "Impossible," Vex Thorak hissed through his sharp teeth. "We destroyed all resistance fleets. We wiped out every species that opposed us." His science officer looked up from his instruments with fear in his yellow eyes. "Admiral, I'm detecting weapons that match no known technology. Some of these ships are generating gravity fields. Others are manipulating space itself." Vex Thorak's clawed hands gripped his command chair. "How many ships do they have?" 800 confirmed contacts, sir. But their jamming systems are so advanced there could be more we can't detect." The main communication screen activated without being turned on. A human woman appeared on the display. She wore a dark blue uniform with insignia Vex Thorak did not recognize. Her gray hair was pulled back severely and her eyes held no mercy. "Admiral Vex Thorak," the woman said in perfect Zephyrian language, "I am Admiral Susan Clark of the Terran Commonwealth. You have exactly 1 chance to surrender your fleet and withdraw from this system." Vex Thorak laughed, a sound like metal scraping on stone. "You dare threaten me, human? I command 200 of the most powerful warships ever built. You're pathetic. Colony ships cannot challenge the might of the Zephyrian Collective." Clark's expression did not change. "Admiral, you have 10 minutes to consider my offer. After that, we will demonstrate what humanity learned during our time in exile." The screen went dark. Vex Thorak turned to his weapons officer. "Target their command ship. Prepare to fire." But before the Zephyrian fleet could attack, space itself began to change around them. Stars twisted and bent as gravity fields stronger than black holes focused on individual ships. Reality seemed to crack like broken glass. The first Zephyrian destroyer simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only empty space and confused sensor readings. "What happened to the destroyer?" Vex Thorak demanded. "Unknown, sir," his science officer replied with a shaking voice. "It appears to have been shifted into another dimension." More ships began to disappear. Others found themselves crushed into tiny points of light as artificial gravity fields compressed them beyond their structural limits. The Zephyrian fleet, which had seemed invincible for 15 years, was being systematically destroyed by weapons they could not understand. Clark watched the battle from her command chair with satisfaction. The Voidrons could manipulate space and time. The Ember Collective commanded stellar fire hot enough to melt planets. The Echo Commonwealth attacked from multiple timelines at once. All of them had learned from humanity's example. All of them had refused to give up when the Zephyrians thought them dead. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, a tall being with crystalline skin. "The Zephyrian formation is breaking apart. They're trying to escape." "Signal all units," Clark ordered. "No survivors, no ships escape. They came to our home expecting to find sheep. Instead, they found wolves." The battle that followed was not really a battle at all. It was more like an execution. Zephyrian ships that had conquered 100 worlds were torn apart by weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Some were consumed by balls of stellar fire that burned hotter than suns. Others were caught in temporal loops that aged their hulls to dust in seconds. The most feared were the ships that simply screamed once over their communication systems before going silent forever. Down on Earth, General Lisa Kane watched through emergency telescopes from her bunker beneath the ruins of Colorado Springs. Zephyrian vessels that had seemed untouchable for 15 years were being destroyed one by one. Her radio crackled with Admiral Clark's familiar voice. "General Kane, this is Admiral Clark. Sorry we're late to the party. Hope you saved some of the fighting for us." Kane laughed out loud for the first time since the invasion began. "Admiral, there's plenty to go around. What are your orders?" "Secure all major population centers. We have medical ships with food, medicine, and technology that will make Zephyrian equipment look like stone tools. As for military operations," Clark's voice carried the weight of 25 years of planning. "No prisoners. No mercy. They came to enslave our people. They will not leave alive." The few remaining Zephyrian ships tried to flee toward the outer planets, but they found their escape routes blocked by vessels bearing the symbols of races that had been extinct for decades. Admiral Vexithorak's command ship was the last to fall. As gravity torpedoes tore apart his hull and his crew died around him, he managed one final transmission. "This is impossible," he gasped into his communicator. "We are the Zephyrian Collective. We have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. How can you defeat us?" Admiral Clark's voice came back clear and cold. "Because you made one mistake, Vex Thorak. You thought destroying our worlds meant destroying our people. You thought killing our bodies meant killing our ideas. You were wrong." The command ship's hull began to crack as artificial gravity crushed it slowly. Vexithorak could see other ships through his broken viewport. Ships with hull markings from species he thought had been completely eliminated. "You didn't just attack humanity," Clark continued. "You attacked everyone. And eventually, everyone fights back." The last thing Admiral Vexithorak saw was a human ship firing weapons that had been built by 6 different species, all united by one common goal: the complete destruction of the Zephyrian Collective. Above Earth, the skies began to clear for the first time in 15 years. The battle for Earth's skies lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, 200 Zephyrian warships had been reduced to floating debris and empty space. Not a single human ship had been seriously damaged. The alien occupation that had lasted 15 years was broken in less time than it took to eat lunch. General Lisa Kane stood in the ruins of what used to be Colorado Springs, watching through binoculars as strange new ships landed in the cleared areas around the city. These were not the sleek warships that had just destroyed the Zephyrian fleet. These were larger, slower vessels with medical crosses painted on their hulls. The first ship to land was massive, easily the size of a city block. Its hull was white and silver, and it settled to the ground with barely a sound. A ramp lowered from its side, and figures began walking down toward the waiting humans. The first person Kane saw was a woman in a dark blue uniform. She was older now, with gray hair and lines around her eyes, but Kane recognized her immediately. "Admiral Susan." "Clark, Kane said, extending her hand. General Kane, Clark replied, shaking hands firmly. You look like you've had a hard 15 years. Kane laughed, but it was not entirely happy. That's one way to put it. We lost a lot of good people. Behind Clark came beings that Kane had never seen before. One looked like it was made of living crystal that shifted colors in the sunlight. Another resembled a tall human, but with skin that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. A third had features like carved stone and eyes that glowed with inner fire. General, Clark said, I'd like you to meet our allies. This is Shipsinger Vel'Ana of the Voidren Remnant, War Chief Korg of the Ember Collective, and Time Walker Seth of the Echo Commonwealth. Kane tried not to stare. After 15 years of seeing only humans and Zephyrians, meeting new alien species felt like stepping into a dream. The crystal being named Vel'Ana spoke with a voice like wind chimes. General Kane, your species saved ours from extinction. We are honored to return the favor. War Chief Korg's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The Zephyrians burned our worlds and enslaved our children. Today, we have justice. Kane nodded. To each of them. Welcome to Earth. I'm sorry you couldn't see it before the Zephyrians poisoned it. That will be fixed, said Time Walker Seth. His voice seemed to come from several different moments at once. We have brought tools to heal damaged worlds. More ships were landing throughout the area. Kane watched as humans emerged from underground bunkers and hiding places, blinking in real sunlight for the first time in years. Many were crying. Others just stood and stared at the sky, which was blue again instead of the gray-brown color they had grown used to. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived from Luna Base on one of the medical ships. She looked tired but excited as she ran up to Kane and Clark. Admiral General, she said breathlessly, I've been monitoring Zephyrian communication networks. Their entire command structure is in chaos. Colony worlds throughout the galaxy are reporting that their Zephyrian governors have gone silent. Clark nodded. We hit their main communication relays during the battle. Without central coordination, their empire will start falling apart within days. Kane looked around at the bustling activity. Human medical teams were working alongside. Alien healers to treat people who had been living on starvation rations for months. Engineers from multiple species were setting up power generators and water purification systems. Admiral, Kane said, I have to ask, how did you do it? When you left Earth 25 years ago, you had colony ships and civilian equipment. How did you build a fleet that could defeat the Zephyrian Empire? Clark smiled, and for a moment, she looked like the young officer Kane remembered from before the invasion. We found friends, General, and we learned that the Zephyrians had been making enemies for a very long time. War Chief Korg stepped forward. The Zephyrians destroyed our home system 30 years ago. They thought they had killed every one of my people. But some of us survived in deep space. We had given up hope until we met humanity. Shipsinger Vel'Ana's crystal body chimed softly. Our entire civilization was consumed by the collective 50 years past. We were scattered, broken, hiding in the dark between stars. Humanity showed us that the defeated could become victorious. Time Walker, Seth moved slightly, and Kane had the disturbing feeling that she was seeing him from several different angles at once. The Echo Commonwealth fell to Zephyrian weapons 80 years ago. We learned to hide in alternate timelines. Your species taught us that running is not the only option. Kane began to understand. You found each other out there. All of you. All the species the Zephyrians thought they had destroyed. More than that, Clark said. We taught each other. Voidren space-folding technology, Ember stellar engineering, echo-temporal manipulation, human stubborn refusal to give up. We combined everything. Elena looked up from a portable computer she was carrying. Admiral, I'm getting reports from around the globe. Zephyrian ground forces are surrendering or fleeing. Our people are coming up from the underground cities. Clark activated a communication device on her uniform. All medical ships begin planetary restoration operations. All construction vessels start rebuilding major population centers. All combat units prepare for Phase 2. Kane raised an eyebrow. Phase 2? The Zephyrian collective controls over 300 star systems, General. Earth was just the beginning. We're going to liberate every world they've conquered." As if summoned by her words, more ships began appearing in Earth's sky. These were not the medical vessels or construction ships that had been landing. These were warships, each one different from the others, bearing the combined technologies of multiple species. Kane watched a ship that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight settle into orbit. Another vessel that looked like it was carved from a single piece of black stone took position near the moon. A third ship flickered in and out of existence, never staying solid for more than a few seconds. "How many ships do you have?" Kane asked. 800 in this fleet," Clark replied. "But we're not the only survivors out there. When word spreads that the collective can be defeated, other resistance groups will join us." Elena's computer beeped with an urgent message. She read it quickly, then looked up with wide eyes. "Admiral, I'm getting signals from the Tau Ceti system. It's another human colony ship, one that left Earth before the invasion." Clark smiled. "The Tau Ceti colony was always independent-minded. I'm not surprised they survived. But that's not all," Elena continued. "They're reporting contact with something called the Helix Alliance. Apparently, it's a group of species that have been fighting the Zephyrians for decades." Kane felt a strange emotion she had almost forgotten. Hope. Real, genuine hope that humanity might not just survive, but actually win. "Admiral," Kane said, "what do you need from Earth's remaining forces?" "Help us rebuild, General. Help us heal this world, and help us make sure that what happened here never happens to anyone else." Above them, the sky was growing clearer by the hour as alien technology began cleaning the atmosphere. Children who had never seen blue sky were laughing and pointing upward. Adults who had lived in fear for 15 years were standing straight for the first time. The Zephyrian occupation of Earth was over, but the war for galactic freedom was just beginning, and humanity was no longer fighting alone. 6 months after the liberation of Earth, President Jake Morrison stood in the rebuilt Oval Office and looked out through new windows at a transformed world. The gray smog that had covered Washington, D.C. for 15 years was gone. Green grass grew in the parks again. The Potomac River ran clear and blue instead of the sick yellow it had been under Zephyrian rule. But the most amazing sight was the massive construction projects visible in the distance. Human workers labored alongside beings from 6 different star systems, building something that had never existed before in galactic history. Admiral Susan Clark entered the office without knocking, as she had done many times over the past months. Her uniform now bore decorations from multiple species, symbols of alliance and friendship that represented billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. "Mr. President," she said, "the Galactic Liberation Council has finished voting. The proposal passed unanimously." Morrison turned from the window. "Humanity as the coordinating species for the new alliance?" "That's right. Apparently, everyone agrees that humans have a talent for bringing different groups together." Clark smiled. "Of course, they also mentioned our talent for being too stubborn to quit." Morrison laughed. It still felt strange to laugh after so many years of darkness. "And the remaining Zephyrian territories? Falling faster than we can liberate them. It turns out there were resistance movements on dozens of worlds. They just needed someone to show them that the collective could be beaten." Clark walked to the window and pointed at the construction sites. "The first ships of the new Terran Commonwealth will be ready for launch next week." Morrison joined her at the window. The ships taking shape in the orbital yards were unlike anything Earth had ever built. They incorporated the best technology from every species in the Alliance. Voidron space-folding drives that could cross the galaxy in days. Ember collective weapons that could crack moons. Echo Commonwealth shields that existed in multiple timelines at once. "How many species have joined the Alliance now?" Morrison asked. 47 confirmed members, with more requesting membership every day. Dr. Rodriguez's archaeology team has identified the remains of over 200 civilizations that the Zephyrians claim to have completely destroyed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become something of a legend over the past months. Her discovery that the Zephyrians had been systematically destroying all records of conquered civilizations had sparked a galaxy-wide effort to recover lost histories. Hidden archives, Secret databases and forgotten colonies were being found throughout known space. The memorial is finished, Clark said, nodding toward a large structure visible across the city. General Kane wanted you to see it before the dedication ceremony tomorrow. The memorial was massive, a black stone wall that curved like a crescent moon. Names were carved into its surface in hundreds of different languages and writing systems. Species, worlds, and entire civilizations that the galaxy had forgotten were now remembered. Morrison had read the inscription at the base of the memorial many times, but it still gave him chills. They told us to surrender. We chose to remember. They wanted to make us slaves. Instead, we made ourselves free. This is not just humanity's victory. This is the victory of everyone who refused to bow, everyone who kept hope alive in the darkness, everyone who believed that somewhere, somehow, the light would return. What's our next target? Morrison asked. The Kepler sector, Clark replied. Intelligence reports suggest there are 12 inhabited worlds under Zephyrian control. Most have active resistance movements. We should be able to liberate all of them within 3 months. Morrison nodded. The pattern had been repeated on dozens of worlds already. The combined fleet would arrive in a system and destroy the Zephyrian. Garrison forces within hours. Local resistance fighters would help identify collaboration networks and hidden bases. Within weeks, each world would be free to choose its own government and future. Some worlds chose to join the Terran Commonwealth directly. Others preferred independence but maintained alliance relationships. A few decided to form their own confederations, with neighboring systems. The important thing was that the choice was theirs to make. General Lisa Kane, now serving as the Commonwealth's Secretary of Defense, entered the office carrying a stack of reports. Her left arm was mechanical now, replaced, after her old injury finally became too painful to ignore. But she moved with more energy than she had shown in years. Mr. President Admiral, she said, I have the latest intelligence reports from our deep space reconnaissance teams. Kane spread star charts across Morrison's desk. Red markers showed known Zephyrian strongholds. Blue markers indicated liberated systems. Green markers represented newly discovered resistance movements. The good news is that Zephyrian morale is collapsing throughout their empire, Kane reported. Desertion rates are increasing. Some garrison commanders are abandoning their posts without fighting. And the bad news? Morrison asked. Their core worlds are preparing for a final stand. They're pulling back all their remaining fleets to defend their home systems. When we attack them there, it's going to be the biggest battle in galactic history. Clark studied the charts. How many ships do they have left? Intelligence estimates put their remaining strength at about 3,000 vessels, Kane replied. But these aren't the garrison forces we've been fighting. These are their best ships, their most experienced crews. Morrison felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders. Even with all their victories, the war was far from over. The Zephyrian collective still controlled the heart of their empire. They still had the resources to build new fleets and weapons. How many ships can we field? Morrison asked. The Commonwealth fleet now numbers 1,500 vessels, Clark said, but that's not counting our allies. The Helix Alliance has promised 2,000 ships. The Free Worlds Coalition is contributing another 800, and more groups are joining every week. Kane pointed to a cluster of stars near the galactic center. This is where we think they're gathering their main fleet. The Zephyr Prime system, their original homeworld. If we can break them there, the war will be over. Morrison walked back to the window and looked up at the sky. Ships moved between Earth and the Moon in steady streams, carrying supplies, personnel, and equipment for the growing Commonwealth fleet. Some of those ships carried humans. Others carried beings he had never imagined possible. All of them were united by a simple idea: that freedom was worth fighting for, no matter how long it took or how high the cost. When do we attack? Morrison asked. The fleet will be ready in 6 months, Clark replied. But Mr. President, you should know that this battle will determine the future of the galaxy. If we lose, we won't lose, Morrison said quietly. The Zephyrians made the same mistake that every tyrant in history has made. They thought that fear was stronger than hope. They thought that slavery was more efficient than freedom. They were wrong. He turned back to face Clark and Kane. They wanted Earth to surrender. Instead, we taught the galaxy how to fight back. Now every species they thought they had destroyed is coming for them. Every world they conquered is rising up. Every ship they face carries the combined anger of 200 dead civilizations. Outside, the sun was setting over a free Earth. In the distance, the lights of the orbital construction yards twinkled like stars. The first ships of the Commonwealth fleet were nearly complete, ready to carry the message of liberation to every corner of the galaxy. The Zephyrian collective had ruled through fear for 1,000 years, but fear was ending. The age of freedom was about to begin, and it would start with humanity leading the way.